on here. Going to start first in the Eastern Conference with our first series will be between the top seed, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're playing the 8th seed, the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, the fans in Detroit are very excited. It's the first time they've been to the playoffs since the end of the 2008-2009 season. Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously this is where they expected to be coming into this year. They played in the finals last year, and they're looking to take the next step. Now, in this series, both of these teams are actually very similar as far as personnel. You have a Reggie Jackson at point guard for the Pistons. You have a Kyrie Irving, New Jersey native Kyrie Irving, at point guard for the Cavaliers. Athletic small forwards, LeBron James for the Cavaliers, obviously one of the best players in the league and the best players on the planet. And Tobias Harris, an athletic small forward for the Detroit Pistons. At the power forward spot, you have Kevin Love for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you have Marcus Morris, two guys who can stretch the floor. Marcus Morris, that is, for the Detroit Pistons, two guys who can stretch the floor, knock down shots from the outside. Detroit very well coached with Stan Van Gundy. However, they are simply just devoid of talent. As similar as they are, Cleveland just has higher caliber players at those positions. Andre Drummond, the center for the Pistons, should have a big series, and I expect the Pistons to win one game. But I do not expect them winning any more than that. I like the Cleveland Cavaliers taking this series 4-1. Our next series, the Toronto Raptors, the 2 seed, they are playing the Indiana Pacers, the 7 seed. Toronto had their franchise best win total this year with 56 wins to 26 losses. The previous total was set last year at 49, so they've upped that by 7 wins. A quiet, very impressive year for the Toronto Raptors. Not getting a lot of publicity north of the border, but they have had a good season. Of course, now the question is, can they get past the first round of the playoffs? For the Indiana Pacers, it's going to be the Paul George show. They do have Monte Ellis as well, but Kyle Lowry for the Toronto Raptors is a better player than Monte Ellis, and DeMar DeRozan has been spectacular this year. And I expect Toronto to make short work of the Indiana Pacers as well. Paul George, we discussed him earlier on my YouTube channel. A very good player, but he can't carry this team to many more than 1 or 2 victories. I will give the Indiana Pacers 2 victories because they have been pretty good on the road, 19-22 for the regular season. I'm taking the Toronto Raptors to finally get past the first round, which they've struggled to do in the past couple seasons, and they will win this series in 6 games. Next up, the 3-seeded Miami Heat against the 6-seeded Charlotte Hornets. Now, teams 3 through 6, the Miami Heat, Atlanta Hawks, Boston Celtics, and Charlotte Hornets all finished the year 48-34 for the regular season. So all these teams are equally matched. Here between the Miami Heat and the Charlotte Hornets, it's really going to be interesting to see if Goran Dragic, the point guard for the Miami Heat, can handle Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker is the best player for the Charlotte Hornets, and he will need to exploit that matchup. He's a better player than Goran Dragic, but that's really where Charlotte has the significant advantage in this series. Al Jefferson, of course, on the inside is a good player for the Hornets, but Hassan Whiteside, who very well could be Defensive Player of the Year, is on the Miami Heat playing center. So he will be able to neutralize Al Jefferson very effectively. Joe Johnson has been a quality pickup for the Miami Heat. He's played very well since coming over, being bought out of his Nets contract. Dwayne Wade, of course, has the playoff experience. The only chance Charlotte has, again, is Kemba Walker. He has got to put this team on his shoulders and find a way to carry them to victory. We saw that he did that back when he was in college with the UConn Huskies, led them all the way to a national championship. I think he'll get close in this series, but I expect Miami with the home court advantage to win Game 7. So 4-3 in favor of the Miami Heat at the end of this series, but it's going to be a spectacular one, and look for Kemba Walker to stamp himself as a big-time player if you didn't already know so. And then our last series, the Atlanta Hawks are the home team in the 4-5 matchup against the Boston Celtics. Again, as we just discussed, all teams 3 through 6 were 48-34. Now, the Atlanta Hawks beat the Boston Celtics 3 out of 4 times this season. They have a good matchup. As hard as the Celtics play, as good as the roster works together, Atlanta is a very similar team in that regard, and I think that's where most of their success comes from when they've played the Boston Celtics this season. I'll be interested to see how the Celtics play their defense, if they'll put Avery Bradley, their defensive star, on Jeff Teague, the quick, very athletic point guard for the Atlanta Hawks, and then have Isaiah Thomas roam and chase Kyle Korver off the screens. That would be the direction I would go as coach. I'll see what Coach Brad Stevens does. But you also have to take into account that Kyle Korver is 6'7", to Isaiah Thomas's 5'9". So even if Isaiah Thomas can run around and chase him on the screens, or off the screens that is, you still have the height advantage for Kyle Korver, which will make it very difficult for Isaiah Thomas to stay with him. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup at the guard position to see how Brad Stevens can hide Isaiah Thomas at only 5'9". He's their best offensive player for the Celtics, Isaiah Thomas, so you have to have him on the floor, but they're going to have to figure out somehow where they're going to put him on the defensive end. Al Horford matches up very well with Jared Sullinger, the two centers. Both guys stay more in their mid-range game, don't really take it down underneath. But Paul Millsap, the power forward, has had his way with the Celtics this season. So Amir Johnson got $12 million by the Celtics in the offseason. It's time he's got to step up and he's got to start earning his paycheck. My apologies to the Celtics fans, as I am one of them. I don't see the Celtics being able to overcome the Atlanta Hawks. They really got a tough matchup in this first round. They are 20-21 on the road this season. The Celtics were. As the road team, you would expect they would have to win 2 road games because I think Atlanta is good enough to win 1 in Boston. And I see this series ending with the Atlanta Hawks winning 4 games to 2. All right, so there's